Welcome to the Planet Rock Podcast. Hopefully, we're able to spark thought on something new or rekindle thought on a forgotten subject. How you doing, family? I am here with LaShay Harvey. She is currently working on a doctorate at Widener University in the Center for Human Sexuality. As promised, we're going to talk about every realm of being, and this is a very important realm. If I'm not mistaken, two of the main reasons for divorce are sex and money. But Shay and I were having a conversation before. She's doing a 9 months rites of passage program, and she's pretty sore right about now behind this weekend's retreat. So Shay, talk to us a little bit more about that. That's some interesting stuff.
Rock, I realize that there is always a connection between how well we take care of our bodies and how well we take care of our minds, in the ways in which that helps our understanding of our sexuality, right? So for me, I've always been a relatively slim person. So working out was just like weight management. But as of late, I have been really paying attention to what happens with the psyche when you get in touch with your body, the deepest parts of it, the things that it can and can't do, what you tell yourself in your mind. All of that is like a direct reflection to what happens to your intimate life, to your sexual life, to your sexual experiences. So in this moment, I'm walking away with some sore quads, but I'm grateful because I found myself having real intense emotions while I was working out and pushing my body in these places that I have never pushed before. And you hear people doing yoga and sometimes they cry. That's cool. You think it's kind of just for hipsters and people who hug trees. But there's something really powerful about releasing the emotions of the body, releasing that pent-up energy, releasing old memories that the body holds on to, that really is just like a powerful experience. So, I've had a good time. I've had a good time the past couple of days.
Wow. That puts it all together. I like the way you brought that all around there, Shay. That's good. Generally, when people hear that you're working with in the Center for Human Sexuality, all kind of thoughts come to mind other than what you actually do. So what is it you actually do?
So I am a sexologist, which means I do study sexuality. That's a big umbrella term.
Got it.
To be a sexologist, I am someone who pays attention to the sexuality of African American people. So I look at things that impact our sexual development. I look at elements that help us or hinder us from having healthy sexual lives, however we define them. I also like to look at the history of sexuality. I study the history of the sexuality that has been experienced by Black men, Black women, other people of color, our Latino brothers and sisters. Many of us have very similar stories when it comes to sex and sexuality. So I'm always looking at what the connections are there, what are the elements that make that happen. I also find myself very curious. I'm actually writing my dissertation now on contraception and how that affects the body, how that affects the female body and the like. So that's the big scope of what I do. On my day-to-day, I'm a professor. I teach. So I teach on the collegiate level. So I get to bring in a lot of young people who are working with more like psychology majors or human service majors. And some of them come in because it's an elective. Some of them really want to study things like gender, or they want to study reproduction, or they want to study sex in the media, or they have a lot of range, and so psychology allows them to do that. So I kind of bring them in on a myriad of topics that most of them haven't thought about: sexuality and religion, or gender development as a young person or an adolescent. We do talk about some of those parts about sexuality that are not always fun, but sexualization, coercion, force, things like that also affects how we understand ourselves. So I'm an educator at the heart of all of it.
That is very cerebral, when brought the way that you just bring it, right? And so when I'm listening to you, I'm like, okay, the Neanderthal mind, if you will, hears sexuality, and they think nothing but physical. And then to listen to you and what you do, you go back to mental. But mental, of course, rolls right back into your physical being, right? So I heard all of what you were saying about the sexual development, sexual health, and contraceptives, and the effects they have on the body. Like, what are you finding with that?
Let me tell you what's very interesting. I'll start with the mental. Socially, birth control is a great thing. I will agree to it. There are many people who would like to have sex, good sex, and not end up with a pregnancy on the end of every single time. That makes perfect sense to me. What we're finding is, as much technology as we have, and as far as we have come when it comes to contraception, man does not know how the female body actually works. So there are so many processes that the female body has to go through to get that perfect birth control. And often women experience just so much discomfort mentally, so much discomfort physically, so much discomfort with your blood rights or the menstrual cycle, that really those become the barriers to the sex that somebody would actually have. It's not the birth control pill, it's all the other stuff that comes physically and mentally with the contraception that I think kind of separates people from the sex that they would actually be having. But interestingly enough, there was an article that came out in 2016 that talks about racial differences in contraception preferences. And what it found, what the researchers found, is that Black women and Latina women, they like birth control methods that they can control. They like birth control methods that their body is not being a slave to. They also do not like their menstrual cycles interrupted. They do not like birth control that affects that. There's something that's happening mentally that Black women and Latina women are very aware of, how that connects their bodies to the spirit realm and also connects their bodies to themselves. Where Caucasian women, that's not so much their thing.
Really?
They don't mind. They don't mind a contraception. And this is not a blanket statement. This is just what the research found. They don't mind if they're using a contraception method that the doctor has to control and that they don't necessarily have control over. They don't mind that. They also don't mind if their menstrual cycle gets interrupted or goes away completely. That's not something that Black women and Latina women are interested in. So it's interesting because what we're taught, what the field of sexuality and public health messaging will say is, isn't your period so inconvenient? Aren't you just so over it? Don't you wish you had more control over it? And so then that becomes like, I do wish that I didn't have one of those. And that makes the setup for the birth control even easier. But Black women and Latino women are not down with that. They're not interested in those interruptions to the body. So it's an interesting thing.
One of the things that I say in the introduction of the podcast is one of my aims is to make people think in areas that they probably would never go to think. And I find myself sitting here trying to put pieces together of, have I heard anybody talk about? It's not like I have usual conversations about contraceptives and things of the sort, but so now I'm sitting here like, I'd have never thought of that. But it does make sense though, because the birth control definitely messes with your hormones, which is going to mess with your mind, which is going to mess with your body. So that it makes a lot of sense. I just never thought about it. So what can women do that don't want to use formal birth control? What's the solution?
So here's what I will say. We often have talked in the field about with the withdrawal method, right? The penis is inserted into, if we're talking about a heterosexual relationship, penis is inserted into a vagina, withdrawal. We usually use that form of birth control as a less effective method. However, if you have control of your body and your mind, it is not a difficult process to be a part of, right? Maybe when a young person is 16 and they're learning their body and what their body does, it may or may not be the best form of birth control. But for somebody who's working out, who's eating right, who's meditating, who's getting enough rest, who's drinking enough water, there should be some level of control or learning some level of control with the body.
Speak on it
withdrawal
then.
makes it perfect. If as long as that semen does not find itself, I know it, Rock, I know it. As long as that semen does not find itself inside that vaginal canal, you're doing better. Here's another element that I want to say. Is, I might get some flack about this in my field later. So that's talking about the person who owns the penis. The person who owns or has possession of the uterus. We often assume that, I just don't have the time to chart my cycle or to know when I ovulate. It's actually quite easy to test the vaginal secretions that happen every month. To see, you could just insert a finger into your vagina and see how sticky it is or how non-sticky it is.
Okay.
And that lets you know how close you are to your most fertile times. In those times, maybe you use a condom, maybe you use the withdrawal method, maybe you don't actually have sex if you don't want to withdraw at all or if you don't want to use a condom. But there's a way to know what the body is already telling you without any other sort of system. So you've got those elements that don't require any hormones. I have always been a big fan of condoms. I think that they are really helpful to understand as almost like a way to practice what the body can do, if you will. Like, how can we engage in sexual activity and work on holding out, work on holding our ejaculation, work on holding our orgasms in. Some other women have used, so in addition to the rhythm method, in addition to condoms, there are some women who like things, well, you said not hormonal, so that would remove the pill, that would remove the patch, that would remove the brain. There aren't too many others after that. I mean, you could probably take a holistic approach. Maybe there's some teas and tinctures that you could use in the process, but most Western society doesn't allow for that knowledge to have been passed down. Generations in the past, our mothers would tell us what to drink, what to create if we didn't want to get pregnant at a certain time of the month. We just don't have that now. So,
Now,
who knows?
I'm hearing a common theme in these podcasts, especially when even without respect to your specific profession or field of study. But I'm hearing everybody say the same thing with respect to everything needs to be connected. Your spirit, your mind, your body, everything needs to flow together, and you need to have an understanding and awareness of it. I'm hearing this message over and over and over. And so to hear it spoken of with respect to sexuality, I'm sure this is going to open some people's minds, because you're thinking, well, just like working out, or just like my credit, or or my spiritual life, or religious life, however you want to call it, or my interpersonal relationships, I have to work on sex, and understand myself.
Absolutely. We export a lot of our sexual experiences to some other force. I say this we as like the collective human race,
Right.
Namely those of us who live in North America.
Okay.
We will export our sexual pleasure to a partner, right? So we're waiting for the partner to please us. So that's how we know that we're doing something right sexually. We will export our reproduction to a pill or a patch or a ring or something else, and say that is how we're supposed to know that we are taking care of our fertility. Where in the past, to be of reproductive age, like that is what you're thinking about, is your reproduction. But we export that out like, I don't want to think about that. We export our visual pleasures to things like pornography or to very sculpted bodies without acknowledging that there's something inside that body. Do I want to be intimate with someone who is having some mental challenges? And I'm not talking mental challenges, people who may be depressed or need some sort of medication. I'm saying, how do we know that this beautiful body that we see, they're spending 8-10 hours in the gym a week, beautiful. is that same level of investment happening with their minds, so that when they bring this beautiful body to the bedroom and they bring this beautiful mind to the bedroom, they're not leaving with me any negative or suboptimal energy. Right? So we can have the greatest physical sex, right? We could both achieve orgasm, we could sweat it out, we could do all that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what's left, you know what I mean? What's left in the exchange that I still have to carry? And I understand that religion often gets inserted here, and so certain folks who may have grown up Christian or Muslim, or you could virtually talk about any religion, there is an idea that when you have sex, you're exchanging something with someone. And we kind of use that language very loosely now, so that people get afraid of having sex with multiple people.
Right.
I mean, it could work in that way, but really what I think most of these religions are trying to have people understand is there is an exchange in sex. There just is. And normally that exchange is energetically before it's even physical. So if we're not paying attention to our psyches, but we're only paying attention to our bodies, we're doing a disservice to the healthiness of our sexuality that we could be experiencing.
Oh, man. And again, the answer to that is awareness. Wow. The way you put it, I was listening to a speaker last week, and he said something profound that it's not something that I did not know, but it was something that I had not put into word. He said that as children, we live by cause and effect. Mom says be in the house before dark, we're in the house before dark. Cause, effect. But as adults, we have the mental capacity to cause the effect that we want. And most of us are not aware that we're living in cause and effect versus causing the effect. And that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. One of the things that I have tuned my ear to a lot more in terms of professionally is the amount of people who talk about either the suboptimal sex that they're having, the suboptimal partners that they're having sex with, the suboptimal relationships that they're in, fill in the blank. And at every point now, I'm questioning, what did you do to invite that into your space? Do you not feel worthy of really good sex? Do you not feel worthy that you could have a partner who listens to your body? Do you not feel capable of having a partner that you can listen to their body? This is a two-way street. And so much of it is, again, this sort of exporting out all of the things that are going wrong to someone else without saying, what am I saying to myself subconsciously, right? You work out, right? So when you're pushing yourself, there are things your brain has to be doing to help you get up that hill, to help you push that weight a little bit more. And if your mental talk is negative, you won't make it up that hill. Right. You won't be able to push that weight. Your spotter will have to come in and rescue you before the bell drops on your neck. Right. Well, in sex, who else is in the room to help spot you when you're talking negatively to yourself? Who's at the house? Who else is in your mind when you're putting on the clothes, spraying on the cologne, saying that this is what is supposed to attract the person, but you're forgetting that before you don all of those things to the body, your brain is already telling you who you are, who you can be, how you're going to present when you walk out. That then is who you're going to attract to you. So if you find yourself in the same sexual ruts, you got to check yourself, because something about that is you. This is not to throw shade at people. We all have done it. Yeah. We could all go back and look at some of our relationships and say, what part of that relationship, sexual or otherwise, did I need and did I not need and still invite in? And it's the same sexually. We don't always allow ourselves, just like your past guest was saying, we think that because we're grown, we don't have another check and another balance. We just assume, well, I've made it to 18, I've made it to 25, I pay my own bills, I must be making very sound sexual decisions. And that's not always the case. It's not always the case.
No, it's not. Earl Nightingale spoke of something, and he was saying that he said he limited it to your mind and your body, and I guess this would be in the realm of body, but your mind and your body come as standard equipment at birth, and these are two things that we cannot replace, and they're the most complex organisms here, period, the end, right? And we take them for granted. The things that we get for free, we take for granted. Love, friendships, our mind, our body, our spirit, everything that we get free, we take for granted. But the things that we pay money for, oh my God, this is it. Your car, your house, your rings, whatever. All these are all, oh my God, I gotta have these things, blah, 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 blah. But the reality of it is, I can lose a house, I can lose a car, I can lose a bike, and I can get another one. I go out here and get my knee chopped off, that's a wrap. And so sexually speaking, if you don't think about, and this is what you've incited me to think. If I don't think about these things, about the energy that's going back and forth between me, me and my woman, and the thought process of, am I controlling myself more? Am I thinking about that? Because if I don't think about it, how am I going to get better? It doesn't happen by spontaneous combustion, right? So this is some powerful stuff.
It's something you said, Rob. Like the things that we can replace and the things that we can't replace, right? And if you got to get your knee chopped off, it's done.
Yeah.
What immediately popped into my mind is the experience of diabetes in our community.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
So those of you who are very body conscious in terms of taking care of yourself, what goes in, what comes out, what you do to it, understand that nobody wants diabetes, right? Who wants to necessarily be giving themselves shots or be having to tailor their diet in such a way that they feel like they're losing out?
Right.
But here's the real thing. Here's how I see diabetes. And yes, diabetes is taking over this country in so many ways, and it's just no fun. But here's what happens sexually, though. Because when someone has diabetes, right, blood flow stops moving, or blood does not circulate as well. This is why people get toes and legs amputated, right? In part that, and so then what happens when that blood and that oxygen doesn't get to these nerves, they atrophy. So then you have very less sensation. The only thing inside of the clitoris and the penis are nerve endings, Rock. So when you have someone who's not taking care of themselves ahead of getting diagnosed with diabetes, that's one thing. Then they get diagnosed with diabetes. There's a length of time that at some point, even no matter how good you're managing your diabetes, these nerve endings are just going to atrophy. And so what we find in the field is you have some people who are managing their insulin very well, managing their diet very well, right? Working out, exercising. But if you ask them and their partner haven't had sex in 3 years, because the machinery isn't working. And why isn't the machinery working? Because we've got so much of this nerve damage that's not allowing blood to get to the penis and allowing it to become and stay erect. We're not letting blood get to the clitoris where it can become and stay erect as well. So now you've got these people who are taking care of themselves on the back end of a diagnosis, but there's one part of their relationship, that sort of physical intimacy, that they're now missing out because of the decisions that they made when they got that ice cream or that cupcake or drink or whatever the case may be. And so what ends up happening is we have a breakdown in the whole of the person, because now their disease is now affecting even parts of their physical. And I'm not saying that every person who has diabetes is suffering with this, but often many people are, and they're suffering in silence.
Yeah, it's
and
on
who
the
do
way.
you go to? Do you see your pastor? Do you say, look, Pastor, me and my wife been married for 15 years. I done got diagnosed with diabetes, and now here's the thing that I go, like, who are we talking to? So then you got that hindrance as well, as you hit a sort of sexual dysfunction is what some people call, and I'm using that with air quotes. I'm using the term air quotes in dysfunction. Right. Because then there's who do you go to? Who do you talk to? Do you go to your personal trainer and say, how can I get this blood back? Well, that might have probably been a question to have asked 5 years ago, So that's what made me, when you said having a leg chopped off, it made me think of that as well in terms of sexuality and the ways the body reacts.
Well, yet again, that's something else that I would never have thought about But it's right back to what we were saying about living in the cause and effect versus causing the effect that you want. And it all starts upstairs. It all starts mentally, right? The way that I describe it to people is everything that you do successfully, emotionally, physically, spiritually, sexually, whatever it is, it all starts from the inside. This is why when you want to get nourished from food, right? This is why you don't rub it on your arm. It doesn't work that way. You have to put it
Right.
inside and let your
Exactly.
body, let the processes go, for the food to work positively for you. So sexually speaking, what I'm hearing is we have to search inside versus search
Hmm.
everywhere else, right? And then
Absolutely.
be aware of the strengths and the weaknesses, make the strengths stronger and the weaknesses better.
Absolutely.
Do you know that every single time I talk to you, I walk away thinking about something else, right? And I'm just like, okay, this is why I love talking to you. I love when you come to Atlanta. But something else that that,
I
that we
love, listen.
every
Yes.
time, every single time. But something else I thought about, which
I
is
was,
not totally off subject, but but it's still a little twist in it, is that I
okay.
listen to a lot of speakers and they talk about energies. You know how you say like attracts like and everything else. And
Sure.
family, nothing about these podcasts are scripted other than I have some basic questions that I want to ask, and the rest of it just flows. But on Thursday, I was listening to a speaker who was talking about attracting energies and things of the sort. And Shay, you have hit on everything that I was thinking about almost this entire weekend, just within your field of study. And that's why I'm sitting here like, wow. I mean, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised, if that makes sense. You know?
Yes, because here becomes, if I may, here becomes something that I am grateful, I am blessed, I am honored to have found a discipline that I really enjoy.
Okay.
Right, I really
Mm-hmm.
feel like I was called to do this sort of study. There's still some things that I'm working out in terms of or more directions that I want to go, but I do
Right.
feel at home here.
Right.
And often, just as you said at the very beginning of our conversation, so much of what people think that we're going to do when they come to my class is that we're going to spend 16 weeks talking about pornography.
Right.
And truthfully, the act is so minuscule in terms of the amount of time that we spend on it. And
Say that.
I want people to walk away knowing that is exactly that in real life. The actual act of sex takes so little time
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to what your brain has been doing ahead of it, what your body has been doing ahead of it, what your brain and body are going to do after it.
Mm.
It's that takes, because there's the after. I think so much about Frankie Beverly and Maze the morning after, right? On the morning after, there's still
Mm-hmm.
something there. It doesn't matter if you think you've showered it away. It doesn't
Mm.
matter if you've washed sheets. It doesn't matter if they didn't spend the night. The energy is still there,
Mm.
as is the thought that you had leading up to it, the thoughts that you have on the backside of it, whether those thoughts are conscious or subconscious. So, this notion that sexuality, sex, the study of sex power packed in, and I'm gonna be liberal in 25 minutes. It's just it's just not correct. We spend so much more time getting to and being on the other side of that 25 minutes than we actually spend in there. And don't get me wrong, that 25 minutes is powerful. There is a mind, body, spirit connection happening.
Right.
You and your ancestors, you and your future generations, that stuff is going on in there as well.
Right.
But we don't, our society is not designed to allow us to believe that anymore.
Mm.
It's easy to compartmentalize it and move forward in that way. But I can say the same thing when it comes to working out. Some folks go, and I don't know how folks do it, but some people work on their legs one day, some people work on their abs another day. That's not, but you're not just working you work your abs every day.
Right.
You work your legs every day. You work your arms every day. We can't compartmentalize ourselves and think that we're going to still have a whole complete person. It's just
Exactly.
sex and sexuality.
Exactly. It's all coming together. See, yet again, you answered my final question of basically I ask at the end, what is it that you want John Q Average to hear? What do you want the members to hear? And you already answered that question. Now, what we did not do, what is your what is your website? How can the members reach out to Shay? What's going on? What can they read? How do they follow Miss Shay?
Yes, so they can totally find me at LaShayHarvey.com. So there's a lot about me, a lot about the work that I've done. That website is actually going to be updated here very soon so that I can have a calendar function so folks can actually meet me where I am. I am in Baltimore now, but I do travel pretty much up and down the eastern seaboard. I like to get out west as well, but I'm a southerner still through and through.
There you go.
As far north and as far south as I can go, I'm going to be there.
Right.
And come over the summer, a friend of mine, she's a chef, she and I are working on putting together a couple of podcasts of ourselves, of our own, looking at the connections between food and sex. So
really?
That will all be showing up on, that will also be showing up on LaShayHarvey.com, because in some ways, I've got to give her credit, Chef Smith said this, food is intimate, just as sex is intimate. And you said it, you got to put things inside of you to really activate what's happening.
Right.
And so there's a connection there. So we're going to explore that this summer. We're going to take a couple of road trips and explore that. But all of that information will be loaded up to LaShayHarvey.com. And who knows, maybe we'll make a trip to Atlanta and spend a little time in person. And we'll do food, and we'll do sex, and we'll do body work and all of it.
Man, you know how we do. I've been having to hit the record button downstairs. We'll be talking all day.
all day.
Man.
But it's necessary. It's necessary. I think if there's one last piece I can add to what I want people to walk away from, sometimes the field of sexuality says things like, we just need to be so open and free and talk about everything. I think there are limits to everything. I don't feel like we need to be in the street necessarily talking about our sex and sexuality. That in and of itself does not mean that someone is free or liberated.
Right.
But that when there is a time to have a real conversation about the entity that is our sexual being, that we can engage in that conversation. It's not about putting on your Facebook or your Instagram or your Snapchat how fill in the blank you are, how freaky or how this or how that. That is not in true sexual health. But being able to engage in the conversation when the time shows up. The suboptimal and the optimal is a beautiful thing. So us being able to talk is always beautiful, but I realize not everybody comes from a space where they feel comfortable there. That's okay, but there does come time where talking is the mode of transmission of information that has to happen. Sexuality ends up being one of those taboo situations where folks don't like to put language to, but we do it all of the time.
You are.
Do it all of the time.
You are not lying. Something else I wanted to speak on that you spoke about, well, piggyback on, and you were saying that that your field of study is where you feel home, right? And it was Mark Twain who said the two greatest days of your life are when you're born and when you figure out why. Right? And then
Hello, Twain.
I know, right?
Yes.
And then once you figure out why and start working towards it, you're successful. So in my mind, that's part of the energy that I've always picked up from you. That you're happy with self. You're constantly working on self, right, in all areas. But you're happy with self and you're successful in what you're doing and how you want to help the earth, basically, which is the first commandment, which is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so in finding your, if you want to put it in a religious term, ministry or calling or profession, whatever name you want to put to it, when you find that and you have your direction, life just takes on a whole new meaning of waking up. So I can feel what you're saying, because this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm all about that. Like I have a podcast about it, and so it's like it's great to match them and merge them, and to show like this whole podcast series is to show how everything is connected. And you said it. You said people try to compartmentalize, and you can't. You gotta do it all. Mind you, it's an uphill struggle.
I still have to check my own self about my own sexuality. my own desires, my own needs, my own questions. This isn't just something I give to my students or just something I talk in the streets. I too have to sit down and ask the hard questions and listen for the hard answers.
Right.
You know, I too have to be patient. So it's
Right.
not, that's I think the part that folks often miss about when you are walking in that thing that is part of your purpose. And as you continue to go higher and higher is you get to do the work with self first.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk about being out there with somebody else. I always use the analogy, when you're on a plane, they do not tell you to put that oxygen mask on the person next to you. You have to put it on yourself first. Otherwise, you're going to be passed out trying to help somebody get out the seat. And so
Right.
what good would I be? And I am still working on the best parts of me. So there are days when I can't even help others because I'm just putting the mask on myself. And I have to take that oxygen in for myself. So learning that balance is beautiful, is a beautiful part of the process as well. So I thank you for honoring that and seeing that within me, sir. I honor that within you as well.
Thank you, Shay. Family,
You welcome.
we have nothing else to say. I can just hit the record button. I will say though, like if you're not watching the podcast, go on to the site and you'll be able to see Shay's website come up, and so that you can get some visuals in there. There are a few pictures of her. You know, she's like a sister to me. So reach out, follow her. I'm gonna follow her. No, check it out, see what's going on, and let's keep learning ourselves. Let's keep learning about ourselves, right? Y'all have a go. That concludes the Planet Rock podcast topic for today. Should you have questions or comments, please either send an email to comments@planetrock.us, click the Ask the Trainer button, or give us a call at 877-776-2290. Thank you.